In the frigid dawn of a Canadian winter, the snow-capped peaks of Banff National Park lay blanketed in pristine white as a mother snow leopard and her cub emerged from their den to hunt. The snowfall was relentless, creating a treacherous landscape as the mother guided her cub along the icy bank of a mountain stream. They hadn't eaten since the previous night and hoped to catch a fish or small bird to satisfy their hunger. The mother snow leopard moved with practiced caution, ears perked and golden eyes scanning the rushing water with laser focus. Her cub bounded playfully beside her, investigating everything with unbridled curiosity, not yet having learned his mother's careful ways. The young leopard leapt onto a rock dusted with fresh powder, but beneath lay a thin sheet of unstable ice. A sharp crack echoed through the stillness as the cub's entire body plunged into the frigid current. The mother snow leopard whirled around instantly, rushing to the stream's edge with a desperate roar that called for her baby. The cub surfaced briefly, struggling to swim, but was quickly swept away by the merciless current. The stream surged with unexpected power, a spring thaw having begun in the mountains above, creating a torrent that carried everything in its path. The mother leopard sprinted alongside the bank, desperately reaching with her paws, but the cub remained just beyond her grasp. The terrified shriek of her baby echoed through the valley, silencing the forest in a moment of collective dread. The snowfall intensified, the mother's anguished roars mingling with the howling wind to create a symphony of heartbreak. The cub's strength began to fade, its small body bobbing helplessly in the cruel, icy water. The mother leopard watched in despair, eyes glistening with what could only be described as tears, powerless against the raging current, stealing away her precious cub. Suddenly, the current slammed the cub against a partially submerged log. The impact momentarily stopped its downstream journey, but now the small leopard was pinned by the force of the water, struggling to keep its head above the surface. Jack Thornton, a veteran park ranger, was conducting his regular patrol along the stream in his weathered dark parka. He had dedicated decades of his life to protecting the park's wildlife, becoming more a part of the wilderness than the distant civilization. While traversing a snow-covered path, he froze as a strange cry pierced the natural symphony of the forest. The sound was haunting, continuous, and desperately weak, clearly an animal in grave danger. Jack quickened his pace toward the stream, ears straining to locate the source, pushing snow-laden branches from his path. From a distance, he spotted a female snow leopard racing frantically along the waterline, her gaze fixed on something in the rushing water. Drawing closer, he immediately identified a snow leopard cub trapped against a fallen log, fighting for its life as the current threatened to push it under. Without hesitation, Jack shed his heavy jacket, tossed it aside, and plunged into the bone-chilling water. The cold hit him like 1,000 knives, but his strong arms cut through the current, propelling him toward the struggling cub. The cub's head barely remained above water, its eyes clouded with cold and terror. Jack battled the current, each powerful stroke bringing him closer to the small creature, slowly losing its fight. With one final lunge, he grabbed the cub's scruff just as its head began to slip beneath the surface. At that moment, the log shifted with a thunderous crack. Jack barely had time to react as a massive section of the deadfall broke loose, tumbling downstream directly toward them. With one powerful thrust, he pushed off from the stream bed, clutching the cub to his chest and narrowly avoiding being crushed by the rolling timber. The water hammered his body like concrete, but his grip remained steadfast, refusing to surrender his precious cargo. With every remaining ounce of strength, he kicked hard toward the shore, one arm locked around the snow leopard cub. The frigid water blurred his vision, but Jack's instincts guided him toward the nearest bank, where a fallen tree provided an escape. The mother leopard paced the shoreline, growling with anxiety, her eyes never leaving her cub and the human struggling to save it. Jack finally felt solid ground beneath his feet and dragged both himself and the cub onto the snow-covered bank. He gently placed the snow leopard cub on the snow, its small head resting on his trembling arm. The cub's face had turned a sickly blue from cold, water streaming from its sodden fur onto the pristine snow. Jack unwound his woolen scarf and wrapped it around the small body, desperately trying to transfer warmth to the freezing animal. He massaged the cub's sides, speaking in soft, soothing tones as if reassuring a child. The cub's breathing was shallow and irregular, but its eyes began to flicker open, though still unfocused. Jack reached for the emergency pack always strapped to his belt, retrieving a thermal blanket and gently rubbing the cub's body. Under his careful ministrations, each strand of the snow leopard's fur gradually dried as its body temperature slowly climbed. The cub drew a shuddering breath, trembled violently, then lifted its head slightly to meet Jack's gaze, with what seemed like recognition. Jack managed a weak smile despite the water cascading from his hair and eyebrows, the bitter cold forgotten in this moment of connection. He enveloped the cub in the reflective emergency blanket, holding it close to share his remaining body heat. Just then, a deafening crack sounded from above. Jack looked up to see a massive wall of snow detaching from the mountainside, an avalanche triggered by the day's unusual warmth. With the cub clutched to his chest, he scrambled up the bank toward a cluster of sturdy pines. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the snow thundered down, missing them by mere yards and crashing into the stream where they had been only moments before. From across the newly transformed landscape, the mother snow leopard watched intently, waiting for an opportunity to approach her baby. The cub let out a weak mewl, far different from its desperate cries when fighting the current. Jack whispered reassuringly, "You're safe now, little one. We made it." The mother leopard approached with cautious grace, her movements fluid, but her eyes intense with maternal concern. Jack carefully retreated, placing the cub on fresh snow to make it easier for the mother to reclaim her child. The mother leopard bent down, tenderly licking every trace of moisture from her cub's back with devoted thoroughness. The cub nuzzled its mother in return, pressing its small head against her chest as if confirming its safety. Jack remained motionless, arms wrapped around himself as his breathing steadied, eyes bright with quiet triumph. Mother and cub remained together, reunited in a moment that seemed to suspend time itself. The mother leopard raised her magnificent head to regard Jack, not with aggression or fear, but with what could only be interpreted as silent gratitude. Then with deliberate calm, mother and cub turned and padded into the dense forest, disappearing among the snow-laden pines. Jack watched them go, his heart light despite his freezing clothes, feeling he had performed the most meaningful act of his career. Returning to his rustic cabin outpost, he changed into dry clothes, stoked a roaring fire, and resumed his ritual of morning coffee. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the evergreens, dusting the snowscape with diamond light, Jack heard soft footfalls outside. Leaving his breakfast, he opened the door to an astonishing sight. The mother snow leopard and her cub had returned. The mother carried a freshly caught Arctic hare in her jaws, regarding him without a trace of the wild's usual wariness. The cub trotted beside her, fully recovered, its bright eyes meeting Jack's with unmistakable recognition. They stood before his wooden porch steps, their silver-white fur gleaming in the early morning light. The mother placed the hare on his doorstep, then backed away several paces, watching him with intense intelligence. Jack stood frozen in amazement, his heart pounding with emotion at a sight few humans had ever witnessed. He carefully stepped onto the porch and bent to retrieve the offering, never breaking eye contact with his extraordinary visitors. The cub took a tentative step forward, brushing its nose against Jack's outstretched fingers, as if remembering the hands that had saved its life. Jack gently stroked the cub's head, overcome with emotion that transcended the need for human language. The mother leopard remained perfectly still, seeming to evaluate the man who had risked everything for her offspring. That night, a vicious blizzard descended on the mountains, the worst storm in decades according to the park's weather station. As howling winds threatened to tear the roof from his cabin, Jack heard scratching at his door. Opening it cautiously, he found the mother and cub huddled on his porch, seeking shelter from the lethal storm. Without hesitation, he welcomed the wild creatures into his home, creating a sanctuary of unlikely trust as they waited out nature's fury together. When morning came and the storm cleared, Jack smiled as he opened the door, watching mother and cub bound into the fresh snow. But he knew this wouldn't be goodbye. He returned inside, emerged with several cuts of venison, and placed them on a flat rock near his woodpile. He retreated a respectful distance, observing as the leopards approached and consumed his offering, cementing their unusual bond. Beneath the vast Canadian sky, an extraordinary friendship between man and wilderness had quietly taken root. Jack continued his duties, but now with daily encounters that transformed his understanding of the wild. On frigid mornings, Fresh paw prints in the snow told the story of nocturnal visits. The leopards came and went like silent ghosts. He began leaving small offerings of food each dawn, establishing a wordless ritual connecting their separate worlds. In his heart, nothing could compare to this communion with the untamed essence of nature itself. Jack Thornton shared this story with no one, keeping it as his most treasured secret in a lifetime of wilderness stewardship. Banff National Park became more than his workplace. It was the setting for a connection that defied conventional understanding. The mother snow leopard and her cub would forever remain his most vivid memory in a life devoted to wildlife protection. Some bonds require no words, only the language of respect and right action in a moment of need. And in that snow-covered wilderness, the silent pact between human and wild creature endured through countless winters, a secret testament to nature's capacity for reciprocal compassion.